Hey everyone, it's Lisa Williams here. Psychic medium, healer, author, speaker, teacher, you name it. This is my jam. And if you're just finding me, then I want to say welcome. Hello, my name's Lisa, and I have been working as a psychic medium for a very long time. I gave my first ever reading. Oh my gosh, I gave my first ever reading when I was a real young child. Okay, so I was probably 10, 11 when I was doing my first ever reading. And my intuition has always been around. It's always been a very, very significant part of my life. But I also, back in the day, when I say back in the day, many years ago, my grandmother was also intuitive. And she also did readings. And so while this has been my professional life, my full-time professional career since I was 26. So that has been my full-time professional life. I've been doing readings. I did my first professional reading and got paid for it at the age of 19, 20. Okay, so I've been developing as a medium. We're always developing as a psychic or as a medium for the last 30 years. However, in this period of time, what's happened is I've definitely developed. I've honed in my gift. I wouldn't say I've mastered it, but there is definitely a masterful space that I've come from, because I have developed my whole career on intuition, on being psychic, on being mediumship, teaching it. I've had TV shows. I've been on many TV shows, many podcasts, many radio shows. And so it's been an incredible ride for me, but one I was not, I guess, expecting to be called to. And a lot of people ask me, what are the 5 tips that you need to be a psychic medium, that you really have to hone in on and you really have to think about? And so as I was sitting here this morning, I was like, what are the big 5, the key 5 elements? And it just came up and I went, oh boy, those are big deals. And a lot of people think that it's a really easy position to be in. And it really is. I've loved my work. I'm really good at it. And I've had clientele that I have been reading for 20 odd years. Even now that I've moved to America, and I still have clientele from the UK, and my clientele still follow me. They're still part of my Facebook following and everything else. And it's been a real incredible ride, and one I was not expecting. But I do remember, in fact, I'll tell you a funny story. I do remember going back, gosh, I'm trying to even remember how old I was. I was with one of my best friends. Her name is Samantha. And Samantha was my best friend from the age of 5. We went to school together. We sat next to each other in primary school. It was a thing. And so, you have these sleepovers, and, she was always interested in the occult, in something different, in all of these magical mystery things that completely freak her out. And they still do to this day. Sam, I'm calling you out. But they still freak her out. But there is definitely this intuition, this intuitive vibe. And my grandmother, from my mum's side, so my maternal grandmother, was also a psychic medium. And how hers started was to raise money for the local church. I mean, seriously, she was raising money for the local church. And she said, give me a table, sit me there, and I'll do psychic readings. And that's how she started to do psychic readings. And she was very, very well known in and around the Birmingham area of the UK. And so, she was so, I mean, in a way, I'm a lot like her. I'm a lot like her. She's very outgoing, very much. She said what she said, and that was it. So there's a lot of similarities between us. But she developed as a psychic medium. She said to me, Lisa, you're following my gift. You'll do my work, you'll be an American. I was like, yeah, whatever. And so going back to the story with Sam, what happened is that one night Sam was staying as a sleepover, and I never forget this. And we were playing with cards. We were playing with playing cards, and we were flipping these cards over. And I will never forget her saying to me, "Let's see if you've got the gift." And I'm like, "What is she talking about?" She's like, "Let's see if you've got the gift." So as she's turning these cards over, the light of the outside light of the street light was shining through my curtains. And I still had the French doll Perriot, whatever it was. Anyway, so I remember I was probably 9, 10 at that point. And the light was shining through, and it was actually making the cards transparent. And so I was holding it up and I would go, it's a 5 of clubs. And she was like, no way. And we did this through the whole lot. And then I finally confessed, and I freaked her out. I never forget this. I totally freaked her out. And then I had this whole bookshelf of Ladybird books. And she said, I don't believe you. I think you have the gift. And I went, okay. So I said to her, she said, I'm going to pick a book. And I said, she's going to pick a book. And out of that book, you're going to guess which book it is. And I went, okay, sure. So this is really freaky. So in my head, I said, I need a connection between you and the book. And so she held onto the spine of the book, and she held onto my hand, and she was outstretched across the actual bedroom. And I went, and she didn't even know what the book was. And I held onto the book and held onto her. I held onto her, she held onto the book, and she said, and I said, it's The Princess and the Pea. And she pulled it out and she went, oh my gosh. And we freaked out. And that's when we actually made a lot of noise. And that's when my mum and dad came in and they were like, come on, girls, come on, time to bed. And we freaked ourselves out. We wanted to go to the bathroom so much that we actually didn't know what to do. We were actually freaked out. We thought the ghosts were in our house. All of this. I mean, this was going back to, I was 9 or 10. May even been 11. But I was still young. I mean, let's say I was still very, very young. And, I used to play these games all the time. I used to play these games, and I will never forget, people would say, where's Jamie today? And there was a kid at school called Jamie, and he said, where's Jamie today? And I said, oh, he broke his arm. She's like, really, Lisa? How do you know? Oh, you love Jamie. All of this. It was, just kid stuff. And of course, Jamie West didn't, he came in with a broken arm that following day. And I was like, oh my God, how did I know that? That was weird. And so there's a lot of things that I grew up knowing. And I'm sure my story is not much different to anybody else's. I'm sure there's a lot of other people that know the story and who relate to it and can recognize it as well. And so as being a psychic and being a medium, I didn't go to school to do this. It was not something I wanted to do. I wanted to be a teacher. Well, I guess I am a teacher, obviously. But I never actually wanted to do this. I wanted to teach kids. Now I realize I shouldn't be teaching kids, all right? Because I shouldn't. I love kids, but I don't want to teach kids. Certainly not a traditional subject. And so, yeah, it was interesting. I grew up knowing things. I grew up aware of things. I grew up seeing things, feeling things, speaking to imaginary friends. And this is just something very normal. I'm sure everybody does it. And so over the years, I developed a huge respect for my intuition. A huge respect. And there's times, don't get me wrong, that I wanted to ignore it. There was times that I wanted to play it off. There was times I wanted to put logic into it. But I had to listen. I had to recognize that I was right. I knew all along my intuition was right. And did I like it all the time? No, I didn't. But my intuition is so spot on. So some of the 5 elements of being an amazing psychic or amazing medium. Number 1 is honing in your intuition. It's the foundational skill of being a psychic and a medium. It's listening to your own intuition, your gut instinct, knowing when you're right or wrong. there's times that I'll say something in a reading and I'll be like, no, I've got that wrong. And I'll say it and I'll say, no, let me take that back because I've got that incorrect. And I rewind it and I unpick it. And that's when my clients say, oh my God, you're so spot on. And it's because I'm not rushing, because I'm allowing my intuition to come out. And it's because I'm actually not forcing myself to fill the quiet space. In a reading, I'm not forcing myself to fill the quiet space and be fearing silence. I'll be like, you know what, give me a second, let me feel this out. And I'll feel it out, I'll work it out, I'll think about it. I'll see how it feels in my body. And, you know, these are important parts. So when I'm really work on that intuitive part of me, you know, my readings are they're accurate, because I'm not just talking where I am not actually allowing myself to feel it. And so how I worked on this was developing meditation. And I read a book on somebody who counted cards for a living. And they counted cards in casinos, and they did meditation practices to still their mind. And I listened to these meditation practices and I was like, wow. And that's what I did, is I really started to train my brain. And I was definitely in my early 20s at that point. And I started to really control my mindset. And I really started to meditate, and I started to be mindful in how I was speaking to people. And I started to do active listening techniques, because I was a Butlins Redcoat in the UK. We have these things, they're like entertainment people. And I was a Butlins Redcoat. I've done every job imaginable. And, you know, as I was working with the clients and the customers at Butlins, and I worked in a hotel, we used to have to swan in the grand suite. And swanning in the grand suite was, we had to entertain the guests, we had to sit and talk to them, all of that. And when we did, it was lovely, because I had to sit and use my intuition. I had to sit and listen. I had to sit and do active listening. And it was in that time that I was doing active listening that I would have these moments. I just knew what to say, or I knew what to talk to them about. And a lot of them were like, wow, you know, how did you know? And I used to get told off for not dancing. And I love dancing, but I used to get told off by my ENTS manager. You're not dancing enough, you know. And we used to have to do ballroom dancing with the guests. And it was because I was really getting into deep conversations with them. And they were telling me their life story after 5 minutes of me sitting down with them. All because I didn't realize, but I was using my intuition. So the key to developing as a psychic is, one, developing your intuition. Now, the second one is your ethical practice. So how are you going to approach, you know, this? There's different standards in this work. You know, this industry is not regulated. Anyone can hang a shingle, you know, and say, hey, I do psychic readings. But there's an ethical approach to it. There's ethical boundaries. You know, there's a lot of people who are, oh my God, I read for this person, I read for that person, oh my gosh, you know. And I remember being in so many interviews where people have said to me, you know, who are the famous people that you've read for? And I'm like, well, I've read for a lot, but who can I say? You know, the Kardashians, I can say Sharon Osbourne, but who are the ones that I really can say, and who are very, very, you know, important to me? And I can't, because they haven't given me, you know, the ability to turn around and say, hey, you can use my name. And so we've got to have a respect for client confidentiality. We've got to have a respect for boundaries. We have to have a respect for my client wanting to make their own decisions. Just because I'm telling them something doesn't mean that they have to follow it, and they have to create their own dependence. So this is really an important part. So ethical boundaries, you know, what can you say? What can't you say? You're not going to go and predict a death. You're certainly not going to talk about, you know, oh, my boyfriend, what does he think about me? You know, is he seeing anybody else? You're going, you know, if it affects them, great, but who is your boyfriend talking to? I don't know. I don't have permission to dive into his life. So it's ethical practices. And it's really creating an ethical space. And not only for you, but also for the client. You're not a fortune teller. You're not someone who is here to lower the standards of the industry. And that's what a lot of people are doing right now, is they're lowering the standards of the industry. And that's why it had a bad name beforehand. With the likes of TV shows such as myself, John Edward, James Van Prague, we lifted the industry. And then everybody else just jumps on the bandwagon and it's lowered again. So we want to create these ethical boundaries. So that's number 2. Now, number 3, all right, the best advice I can give anybody is continued learning. Continued learning, which means go and find good people who can push you, who can give you that kick up the butt, who can actually push you to develop your intuition, your psychic awareness without using cards or pendulums. Really encouraging you to stay up to date with new techniques, because this industry is changing. This industry is really going out on a limb. We're actually crossing the boundaries into mental health, because there are people who are coming into us who want readings, who really probably should be sitting with a therapist, and vice versa. And so we're blending, you know, there's such a blend between therapy and psychic work. And I've noticed it in my work especially, that, you know, we're holding the mental health of someone's life in the palm of our hands. And so if we don't continue to learn, then this blend becomes very dangerous. Very, very, very dangerous for the client. And so understanding new techniques, understanding how to work with client, doing active listening techniques, going to workshops, going to seminars, finding out what's going on in the industry, and really working with people who inspire you, you know, to make you a better medium, a better psychic, a better healer, even just a better person, actually is powerful. When you're investing in your own future, you're giving yourself the greatest gift. You really are. And I've realized that a couple of years ago when I started to dive into neuroscience, because I was fascinated by the psychic's mind and how we do this and why we do it. And the psychic's mind is such a powerful place. It's, you know, it's so important to recognize the brain processes that we go through and how we've processed the data for our intuition. And that's what fascinated me, and it made me a much better teacher, made me a much better reader. And so what we're doing is you're constantly learning. So I encourage you all to get really good training by reputable people who have made a name for themselves in the industry, who you trust, because it's about feeling safe with that one person. And then the next, number 4, is having empathy and compassion. Having empathy and compassion for your client is huge, because, you know, a lot of people are going to come in with a huge amount of trauma, and it's what I was just saying, where there's a little bit of cross correlation between mental health and psychic work, is when we're actually working with compassion and empathy and all of this, what we're doing is we're listening. We're really being in that place. You know, I've had clients come in and all they wanted to do was cry and talk and listen to some maybe wise words and then cry and talk again. And we're not here to give advice, but we're definitely here to listen. And if a client is constantly talking, there's a reason for that. There's a reason for it. So, you know, we have to really sit and validate who they are. You know, validate what they've gone through. We're providing some support, and you've got to do it with kindness and understanding. My active listening techniques really come into play when it comes to a reading. And as much as many people don't think that a client should talk in a reading. Our world has changed since the pandemic. Our world has changed, where clients actually want to come and talk to us. They feel safe with us. They don't have to unleash their whole feelings. We're going to tap in, and then suddenly it gives them a point to talk about. And it's really powerful. So having empathy and kindness and compassion is really important, along with active listening techniques. And then the fifth one, which I think is very important as well, all of them are important, but this is really, really powerful for yourself, is really having your own spiritual practice, maintaining your own well-being. Because when you are not good, how can you do a good reading? You've got to prioritize your own well-being. You've got to prioritize your sleep. You've got to prioritize your eating, your water intake, stress management, your exercise. You've got to do all of these things, because you can get burnt out, and burnout is real. Burnout is real. And I hit burnout last year, to the point that I went, I cannot do it anymore. I'm done. And I realized I was just burnt out. So taking a break, stepping back, allows us to really take care of ourselves, allows us to really, really think about what is it that we want. Because as psychics and mediums, we give. And there's only so much that we can give until we have to say, I'm done. I need my own time. So look at how much energy it takes to do a reading, because it takes a lot of energy. And if you're tired, how can you show up in the best possible way? If you are hungry, how can you show up in the best possible way? If you've got things that are going on in your life, if you haven't taken care of your own health, or if you've just had an argument with a spouse or a partner or a business partner, then how can you show up in the best possible way? We don't want to reflect our own emotions, our own thoughts, our own feelings onto our clients. So we have to be really, really in alignment with our own self and our own spiritual and ethical space. So your own personal well-being has to come before everything else. Okay, I know I left it at number 5, but it actually should be number 1. Maintain your own well-being. So I hope that helped you. I hope that gave you some insight of what it's like to be a psychic medium, just some 5 pointers, and some fun stories about some things. So I will see you all next time.